Hello, this is Alyssa of The Life of an Aspie, and today I want to talk about the Targeting Autism Conference. So, if you hear any cars or wind or anything, that's because I'm walking outside. It just helps me to think and to talk whenever I'm walking. So, I attended the Targeting Autism Conference back in May. It has kind of a funny name, like targeting autism, like you're like it's something to be targeted, I guess. I don't know. The full name is like Targeting Autism for Libraries or something. I think they included the word neurodiversity in there somewhere, neurodiverse. I just think they changed the name recently. I don't know what it is now. But anyway, it was a really cool event. I attended it back in May. I also attended it last year. I actually participated last year as a basically I was showing my film last year. And last year I also met my friend Steph Diorio, who I only knew through the internet. She's another autistic self-advocate, and she writes on her blog. She is the founder of the Autistic Gaming Initiative. She talks a lot about just in general, like pro neurodiversity kind of topics, and like basically treating autistic people like humans, which I can definitely get behind because I happen to be an autistic person and I happen to be a human. So she was also speaking this year, and while I wasn't really like participating as a like presenter of any kind this time, I was actually there because I just got invited to basically to sell some of my DVDs for my documentary or anything else that I wanted to. I had a bunch of sensory-friendly jewelry and stuff too, so that was fun. It was like a little Aspie shop. But Steph was doing a full-fledged presentation this time. Last time she was on a panel of, I think there was like 2 or 3 other autistic librarians or people who worked in libraries. And that was a very interesting conversation, and Steph was hilarious. She's always hilarious. She explains that it's because of her interest in comedy. Like that's one of her interests that she's very much into. So she in a way is a comedian herself. And that definitely was a thing for this presentation that she did as well. It's very well put together, and she was touching on some very important things that I've heard her talk about before online, but it was cool to see her talk about it in person. Basically saying, autistic people are human, we need to treat them as humans, donate to organizations that actually help us. What are some other things? If you want to see her presentation, it's actually online right now. I think all the slides are on there. I can link to it in the description below this podcast or YouTube video, wherever I choose to post this. So she did really well. What was also really cool is John Elder Robeson was one of the presenters. If you don't know who he is actually a pretty well-known autistic self-advocate who he's been doing this for a long time. He was like one of the first, along with Temple Grandin. He wrote a book called Look Me in the Eye. He wrote a couple others, I think. But I started reading Look Me in the Eye right before the event just because I had never read any of his stuff and I wanted to, and I didn't get through the whole book, but I read enough that I guess I got an idea of what he might talk about. But what I really loved about his presentation was, while he did talk about his personal experience being on the spectrum, growing up, and how he applied his own skills, which basically came about just because he's autistic and just really got interested in the stuff he's interested in. So he not only talked about that, but he talked about autism culture as a whole these days, which I think is interesting because, he is someone who has been doing this for a long time, ever since like probably before, the neurodiversity movement really took off. So he was more accustomed to the pathology view. So I think he grew up with, so now it's like he has two different views here that he's dealing with, and I grew up with the pathology view too, but he's much older than me, so he's had more experience than I have in general on that. Like back in I think it was in the 60s or earlier. I don't have a good memory for this stuff. I've studied this before. I just don't remember. You could say that my brain is sort of, there's a lot of dogs barking. You could say that my brain is sort of in my computer. Like I have all of my sources there, but I just can't remember anything from them. So like I remember studying basically the history of autism and how definitely was way more pathologized back in the day, even before I was born. And there are all kinds of theories around it, like, it's caused by what they call refrigerator mothers, who basically they just neglected their children, didn't love them enough, and then they developed autism or something, or like there was some kind of attachment problem there. So that was one theory, which has obviously been debunked. Another one is vaccines cause autism. That was another one. Actually, Steph touched on that in her presentation, and so did John Elder Robeson. They both said, yeah, it's bullcrap, it's debunked. Excuse my language there. But there were like a lot of theories around autism. It was always seen for a long time as something just like really horrible, and Autism Speaks rhetoric did not really contribute to that very well. It did contribute to the negative ideas of autism. That's what I meant to say. If you're not too familiar with Autism Speaks, it's one of the most well-known autism-related organizations, at least in the U.S. And so if you during autism, what they would call Autism Awareness Month, which we're kind of moving towards calling it Autism Acceptance Month, but Autism Speaks uses the word awareness still, I think. Basically during that month, you'd go to GameStop or certain stores that were sort of working with them, and there would be Autism Speaks would basically be collecting donations at all these locations, and it was supposedly to help autistic people or autism research. And most people feel like it definitely exploits a bit of ignorance about autism, about how most people might not know much about it beyond it's this horrible disorder that nobody wants. So yeah, we should contribute to research for a cure for it. A lot of people have a problem with, a lot of autistic people who are more on the side of the neurodiversity movement have a bit of a problem with this rhetoric, because basically autism is genetic. It's not something that can be cured, and not only that, but talking about it with such a negative light, pathologizing it so much, talking only about the negative statistics associated, like how much it costs, and all the risk things, and all that stuff, all the bad things that could happen. That does not give parents hope. That does not give autistic people hope. I mean, if anything, it destroys the self-esteem of autistic people the most. So that's the kind of rhetoric that Autism Speaks uses. They've changed it a little, but their funding has always been kind of bad. Not really. Only 4% is actually helping autistic people directly. The rest goes towards autism research, which I don't even know how much of that we even need these days. So, alright, that was a little tangent there, but that's just to fill people in who aren't really aware of where Autism Speaks are coming from. And that's not to say that there aren't some perfectly nice people in the organization. I just don't think that they really see it from the perspective of autistic self-advocates, and they might not even be aware of what's going on with the funding and just how much is going into the pockets of the higher-ups and stuff like that. So anyway, going back to the conference. So something really interesting is that, like I mentioned, both Steph and John Elder Robeson mentioned the whole, the different theories on autism, and including things like, vaccines, and even Mr. Robeson agreed that this is something that has been thoroughly debunked. But something really interesting that he brought up was there's, from both sides, there's so much there's so much fighting from all sides. There's not a lot of people I think are aware of this, but there are some extremely polarizing views about autism that involve, the autism community, people who are on the spectrum, as well as parents of children with autism, professionals. Any one of these people could either have a more, they could lean more towards the pathologizing view or more towards the neurodiversity view. And I feel I should also explain neurodiversity for people who are listening to this. Neurodiversity is basically saying, it's a term that means everyone's brain is different, and things like autism, ADHD, and whatnot are basically just a natural variation of the human condition or human experience. It's not really saying that they're not disabilities or don't have difficulties. This is an important thing I feel I should mention. Certainly, the things that I deal with, like anxiety and depression and health issues, I want to treat those for sure. But the way autism is just the way that my brain functions, and I should be positive and accepting of that about myself. And so neurodiversity is great in that regard for me. Neurodivergent people are basically people who are autistic or have ADHD or have some kind of neurotype, brain type, that does not fit the norm or the neurotypical type. So definitely two very different views between sort of the pathology, here's a list of symptoms and behaviors, versus people's brains are different, we function different, and we should accept the way that they are. So you'd imagine, given that there is so much variation on the autism spectrum, there are so many different views that tend to lean more towards one side or the other. Some are more in the middle. But it's not too uncommon for an autistic adult who aligns more with the neurodiversity paradigm or neurodiversity movement, who says, I accept myself for the way I am, I don't need a cure. On the other side, you might have, this is pretty common on social media actually, you'd have a parent of someone on the spectrum who has very high support needs, or another term that you might hear is low functioning, which is something the neurodiversity advocates are trying to move away from, because low functioning might deny someone agency or independence, or be used against them in that way, or to assume that, they can't hear us, they can't, we need to speak for them, when they might actually be very capable of speaking for themselves. While high functioning, you might have too high expectations. You might forget that the person does have some struggles and then fail to accommodate for those. So that's why I use the term support needs. So there could be a parent with a child with high support needs, with most likely comorbid conditions, like let's say they have some severe digestion issues, which is actually a really common autism thing, or they could have OCD, or they could have compulsions or behaviors like banging their head on the floor, or like eating things that aren't food, or smearing their feces on the wall, and the parent would get upset at this autistic self-advocate saying, it's like, well, you don't speak for my child, and then she'll go on to talk about what her child deals with, and so it's like you've got some issues here. For one, and I think Mr. Robeson actually made this point, is that when you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. So it doesn't even make sense to compare, to say, you don't speak for my child. It's like, of course I don't speak for your child, because I'm not your child. At the same time, though, I've also heard from autistic people who do have high support needs, like ones who are nonverbal, have all these behaviors and all that. Like, there are some who do write about their experience online, and I've heard from some of them that basically say, yeah, actually, the other autistic people do speak for me. Like, they are reflecting some of the things that I'm thinking and believing, and it's helping me because I don't always have the energy to explain these things. Now, that doesn't go to say that all autistic people with high support needs think this way. I'm just saying some of them would agree with the autistic self-advocates. What's also interesting is, on the other hand, I've heard of people on the spectrum with low support needs, or people who might even have been previously diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, which was thought to be high-functioning autism. So, they have the ability to do, things that people maybe with higher support needs might not be able to do, or find it easier to do certain things, and yet they might hate the fact that they're autistic. They might want a cure. They might be more along the lines of the pathology view. So it's really incredibly variable, the different types of views that are out there. And I know it seems like I'm kind of going off on these little tangents, but I am getting to a point here, because something that John Elder Robinson said, a point that he made, really resonated with me and stuck with me. He basically said that regardless of whatever your views are, I mean, you could even be, an anti-vaxxer. Something that we all should agree on is that we want a better quality of life for people on the autism spectrum. I think that's what he said, something along those lines. I might be misquoting, my memory's not the best. But I guess the gist of it is that, nothing's gonna happen if we're, trying to, if our goal is just to be right, whatever side that you're on, we're not gonna get anywhere. We need to work together to, come up with a plan here and figure out, how can we make life better for autistic people? Because I feel like that's the one thing we agree on, whether, it doesn't matter what vocabulary you use. Doesn't matter if you say, person with autism or autistic person. Doesn't matter if you're more for neurodiversity or more for pathology. We want a better quality of life for autistic people. Sorry, I had to take a drink of water. Wow. That was a lot of words that came out of my mouth. Now, to be fair, there are people out there who I feel care more about being socially appropriate than about the well-being of autistic people. I've known plenty of parents, even in some cases, some of these parents are autistic themselves, just undiagnosed, but it's been hammered into them to act normal. Whether they're autistic parents or non-autistic parents, for most people, it's been hammered into us to act a certain way, to be socially appropriate. So we want our children to act that way. Some parents, I feel, it's reasonable, I think, to want to teach your kids social skills and to want them to be appropriate so that they won't be a target, so they won't get hurt, for sure. But there are definitely parents who want their kid to be normal just because it's more convenient for them, and all their annoying behaviors won't be there. That I have a huge problem with, definitely. So when I'm talking about people of all different views, I'm not including that. I'm talking about the people who all just genuinely want a better quality of life for autistic people. So going back to the conference, because another kind of important thing that I wanted to mention, and this was after I had already seen John Elder Robeson speak, and I remember I was at the table where I guess my ASPE shop table, or I actually call it the neurodiversity shop. My friend Miranda, she came along with me. She's awesome. Shout out to her, because she helped me so much with this whole event and with managing the table and everything. And also Steph too. She kept us company, and that was really nice. But I remember I was at the table and I noticed that there was an Autism Speaks table in the exhibit hall. And I mean, I noticed this the second I came in, and I was expecting it because it was on the itinerary. I remember the last year when I came, they were there too, at the one last year. And that kind of surprised me, because I'm thinking, oh, there's so many autistic self-advocates here. Like, majority of the people speaking are autistic, and majority of them seem to be more aligned with the neurodiversity paradigm. So why is Autism Speaks here? So one thing I definitely noticed last time, rather smugly, forgive me, that I noticed that not a whole lot of people actually went to the Autism Speaks table. I was rather actually kind of happy about that. But this time around I noticed the same table, same person who was there last year too. And I'm not the kind of person, I don't like confrontation. I don't get anything out of confronting someone or being aggressive or trying to argue with them about things. I had no intention to try to debate with the person at the Autism Speaks table. I just thought the best thing to do would just be polite, just be nice. It doesn't matter where they're coming from. They're here, I'm here, I can't do anything about that. So the best thing I can do is just be friendly. Alright, I'm back in my room, but I'm gonna continue what I was saying. So basically, my goal is just to, just be friendly, and kind of neutral. And, but that didn't really stop me from, because I had Miranda there, and I had Steph there. It didn't stop me from, talking to them about the fact that Autism Speaks is there. I remember at some point I actually went over to their table, and more out of curiosity, I picked up one of their handouts. And it was one that, I think I've seen this one before, it's online as well. It's basically just all the statistics about, not all of them, but like the more negative statistics about autism. So it costs $60,000 a year. There's a high chance of wandering and drowning, and basically a lot of the things on it were sort of alarming and fear-mongering. And while I do appreciate that Autism Speaks has changed their mission statement basically to, instead of have the word, cure in it, it's more like support. They still have this stuff. They still have these handouts that they're giving out. And so I brought one over and showed it to Miranda and showed it to Steph, and it's like, hey, check out the stuff that's not surprisingly at the Autism Speaks table. And we were just talking about it, and all three of us kind of have the same view on Autism Speaks, where it's we don't want to support them. They don't seem to be changing much. But I guess we kind of joked saying, oh, we should, I don't know if this is me or one of the others who said this, but basically we said, oh, we should flip the Autism Speaks table, and I think I remember saying like, no, that's low, guys. Like, we weren't seriously talking about doing that. We wouldn't do that. We're decent people. But like, it was more of like a joke thing. And I said, instead we could just tell people not to go to the Autism Speaks table. Problem solved. Right as I was saying that, the person from the Autism Speaks table, like, was walking, like, up behind us. Like, I guess she came out from another, like, hallway or something. And she said, I heard that, and that led us into an interesting conversation. Basically, like, I felt kind of bad just because, like, it's like, oh no, like, I hope I didn't offend her. Because it's like, again, like, I don't have anything against, like, the actual people. It's just, like, the organization as a whole is kind of, I don't really agree with them. So, like, so she was talking and saying, like, oh, it's like, it makes me so sad when people, like, talk about us like that, or they think that we're all about, curing and stuff like this, when it's like, really, we do a lot of good work for the autism community. And she's talking about some programs that are, like, helping people on the spectrum, and I was just being nice and listening, and I truly believe, honestly, that no matter, even if I very much disagree with someone, or someone's coming from a completely different perspective than me, even if I think it's, like, completely wrong, like, I want to listen anyway. I want to give the benefit of the doubt, because if I don't, I feel we can't progress as a society if we're closed-minded to each other's opinions. That's just my view. So, like, I was listening to her and, like, and saying, like, okay, that's actually kind of nice. Like, I like that. And, I agreed with her on things that I agreed with, disagreed with her on things I disagreed with, and it was a good conversation. And, but I remember still, by the end of it, like, when she walked away, I remember thinking, I might have even said this out loud to my friends, that I thought, like, it's like, that lady's nice, but I still feel like I wouldn't really want to support them or work with them until I see real, tangible change. And one person's, especially from the inside of the organization, one person's, testimony of it doing great things for autistic people. I think especially the fact that she's non-autistic, at least as far as I know. Then again, I don't know. I shouldn't make assumptions. It's like, especially if she is non-autistic and is just working for them, it's like, I'm going to be a little suspicious. Like, I don't doubt that, maybe they are doing some things that are helping, but it's like the amount of things that are helping versus the amount of stuff that I feel is just kind of useless, in my opinion, is like a big difference. But I guess also after that conversation, I thought about what John Elder Robison said, which was, we need to still try to come together and, like, just agree, like, we want the world to be better for autistic people. And I feel like even people from Autism Speaks, even if I completely disagree with them and think that what they're, that they're completely wrong and all of that, like, their intentions probably are to help autistic people, like, at least majority of the well-meaning ones. I mean, there might be some who just, want us to act normal, but I feel like if any tangible change is to be made, the best thing to do is just to, like, at least if there was anything I could do, it would be to give some feedback, some honest feedback, very nicely put, to Autism Speaks, of what are some things they could do to improve. And I don't even know if they're going to listen to me, but they might listen to a lot of us. Like, they might, if we all, came in swarms to, like, that sounds more threatening than it should. Not swarms, like, we're not going to have an angry mob outside of their, their, wherever their organization's base is. But I feel like if we came in and talked to people, if they like, I don't know how much exposure Autism Speaks has to actual autistic self-advocates, like, in person. I mean, there's a lot out there on the internet, but, you know, they probably are thinking, oh, I can't believe what you read on the internet and blah, blah, blah. But, like, if they had a lot of more exposure to us, perhaps, like, maybe they'll start thinking, okay, we need to shift our focus. Then again, it's, like, really hard if they're really focused on, like, the money. It's hard to shift someone away from focusing on the money if they're in it for profit. I know they say they're a nonprofit, but I think a big chunk of their money also goes towards, like, you know, people's careers that are in the organization. And but yeah, I guess just the biggest takeaway I got from this conference in general is basically, we just all want life to be better for us. And it doesn't matter what your viewpoint is. I do think that it's always good to back whatever ideas, you know, rational people would say, like, okay, these ideas or these concepts or these vocabulary are the things that are going to help us to, I guess, be more positive about autism, and, you know, and to help the overall quality of life of autistic people. Then again, that's me being biased too. When I say, like, positive, I know I'm thinking of all the other people who are going to say, like, oh, we shouldn't be positive. It's a disorder and it's got all this stuff, and whatever, I give up. My brain is starting to die right now, so I'm not very good at explaining myself at this point. I also have stopped walking, and after I'm done walking, I'm usually tired. So anyway, that's really all I have to say about the event. I might write more about it later, not sure. But yeah, it was overall very good and very nice to bring Miranda along with me and to see Steph again and to see all these awesome speakers. And I can't wait to see what else this conference does, because it's really good. I think it is probably one of the best autism-related conferences that I have been to. So, yeah. Anyway, I hope you all have a good day. And if you want to see Steph's slides, or I think John Alder Robeson's are in there too, or some information about his talk, I'm gonna post a link down below, so check it out. Bye-bye.